Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Look, if you're tackling Eiken Grade 1, you already know the vocabulary section is just a complete beast. But today, we're going to completely change the game. We are diving straight into our Eiken Inkyu Hisunokoi Kaisetsu. That's the essential vocabulary explanation that'll actually lock advanced English words directly into your long-term memory. We're throwing out the flashcards. No more painful rote memorization. Instead, we're doing a one-shot install, getting these words totally ready to deploy in your next essay, reading passage, or interview. Mastering vocabulary isn't about memorization. It's about installing the core image. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means looking at the etymology, the actual history of the word, and creating a vivid, totally unforgettable mental picture. When you grasp the raw physical action a word was originally built to describe, you don't just remember it, you literally feel it. And that feeling, that is what permanently locks the concept into your brain so you can use it immediately. Okay, let's dive into this. We've grouped today's vocabulary into 4 powerful themes to give you a clear roadmap and dramatically reduce your cognitive load. We've got 1. Hard politics and debate battles. 2. Personal ability and choices. 3. Physical and dynamic communication. And finally, 4. High-level system concepts. Let's start with Section 1, Hard Politics and Debate Battles. These are your heavy-hitting terms used in public arenas, legal battles, and really fierce disagreements. First up is impeachment. Now, I don't want you to just think accusation. No, the core image here is placing public shackles on a figure in power. It actually comes from the Latin word pedica, which literally means shackles. So it's not just criticism, it's a strict legal mechanism used to pursue someone's crimes and strip them of authority. Definitely watch out for key collocations like vote for impeachment or face impeachment charges. And this next part brilliantly illustrates the difference between an intellectual battle and an emotional one. Look at rebuttal. The core image here is taking an opponent's arrow and just bouncing it right back off your shield. It's using logic to shatter an argument, making words like refutation a perfect synonym. But then on the flip side, we have revile. Coming from the Latin for vile or cheap, to revile someone is a furious, highly public attack that reduces a person's worth to absolute zero. You're not arguing with them, you're vilifying them. Let's see how this builds with our next 2 words, absolve and fundamentally. To absolve is to literally untie the ropes. Imagine a judge physically untying the heavy ropes of guilt, completely freeing a person. You absolve them from blame. Now, contrast that freeing, weightless image with the heavy, structure-altering power of the word fundamentally. This is not some surface-level tweak. It's an earthquake at the base of a building. If something is fundamentally flawed, the very foundation it stands on is shaking. Okay, let's lock this in with a quick story. Picture this scene. The impeached president presented a perfect rebuttal, yet he was still reviled by the public. And though he was officially absolved, trust was fundamentally broken. See how perfectly those link together? Just replay that mini narrative in your head and boom, those 5 words are officially installed. Moving right along to Section 2, Personal Ability and Ultimate Choices. Here we're exploring words that define personal stances, crucial life choices, and the sometimes brutal reality of skill levels. We'll kick this one off with celibate. The core image here is cutting off worldly ties to maintain purity. It stems from the Latin celibs for unmarried, but it's super important to know this isn't just about happening to be single. It's a deliberate, strongly principled choice. If you get an essay topic about changing modern lifestyles, this is an absolutely fantastic, high-level insider word to confidently deploy. Next up, we have opt for and prod. To opt for something is to deliberately pluck an option and sever your path of retreat. It elevates your essay tone way more than just saying choose. And then there's prod. I want you to think of its muddy agricultural origins. You're literally poking an ox with a stick to force it to move. Ouch. So when you prod someone into action, you're applying that same relentless, uncomfortable physical or psychological poke. So the crucial point is really visualizing this struggle with these next 2. Inept isn't just being bad at a hobby. The prefix in means not, and apt means fitting. It is a puzzle piece completely failing to fit the hole, a fundamental lack of skill. Contrast that with the desperate survival of scrapping by. You aren't thriving here. You're literally scratching the walls as you barely survive a hardship with zero margin for error. Time to anchor these 5 words into your long-term memory. Picture this historical drama.
In a poor era, a youth opted for a celibate life. Though others prodded him to marry, being socially inept, he just scraped by alone. It's poignant, right? But that image permanently cements those concepts of personal choice and struggle directly into your mind. All right, section 3, physical and dynamic communication. We're transitioning to words that describe aggressive, physical, and highly dynamic ways humans interact. First up here is breezes in. The image is someone entering lightly, just like the wind, completely unbothered. But the catch? This person is usually oblivious to the tension in the room, causing these massive psychological ripples. If a character in a reading passage breezes in unannounced during a crisis, you instantly know they are totally tone deaf. Now let's talk about expressing negativity. Harp on is the brain's negative replay loop. Imagine someone plucking the exact same string on a harp over and over, just endlessly dwelling on an issue. Annoying, right? Now compare that isolated annoyance with jeer. Jeering is aggressive, mob-like psychological violence. It's a crowd shooting actual arrows of verbal mockery at a speaker. And sometimes that psychological violence gets physical. Beat up is raw and brutal. It's inflicting total physical damage to completely remove resistance, like beating up political dissidents. Opposing that dark violence is probe. Picture a surgeon thrusting a sharp needle into the dark depths to find the truth. When investigators probe corruption, they're performing a deep, surgical investigation into hidden facts. Let's tie this chaotic scene together. Imagine this. An oblivious lobbyist breezed into the tense office, harped on funding, jeered at staff, got beaten up by a mob, leading police to probe the scandal. It's a complete tragedy for the lobbyist, sure, but it ensures these dynamic communication words are firmly cemented in your memory. Finally, Section 4, high-level system and science concepts. This is highly specialized vocabulary for biology, economics, and cognitive systems that you absolutely need for grade 1. We start with inflammation. The core image here is a defense system bursting its boundaries and literally catching fire, from the Latin inflammare. Now, yes, it's a medical term for when your body swells up, but metaphorically, it's a powerhouse. You can use it to describe a social situation or an economy where the whole system is overwhelmed and breathing fire. Now, what's really interesting about this next pair is how we jump across disciplines. In biology, we have opposable, like our opposable thumbs. The core idea is facing off and resisting force, the exact evolutionary milestone that lets us grasp tools. Then we pivot straight to economics with microcredit. This isn't just charity, it's a structural lifeline that fills micro gaps in finance using trust, often referred to as microfinance. To succeed in those complex systems, you've got to be attuned. Think of tuning an instrument. You are perfectly matching environmental frequencies and needs. You want to be highly attuned to shifts in the market. But you also have to be careful you aren't just chasing a figment. Coming from the Latin word for molded, a figment is a false, molded image in the brain. So if someone pitches you a crazy conspiracy, you can confidently call it a mere figment of their imagination. Let's lock in these complex systemic concepts with our final story. To cure facial inflammation, a researcher used opposable thumbs for experiments funded via microcredit. Attuned to needs, his success proved the cure wasn't a figment. Look at how those high-level concepts naturally link together in a real-world scenario. And there you have it, a complete one-shot install of some of the most critical vocabulary you'll ever need. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. How will you deploy these high-resolution core images to completely transform your next essay or interview? Seriously, don't just memorize them. Visualize them, feel them, and use them to completely command the language. You now have a rock-solid foundation for your Eiken Ikkyu Hisano Goi Kaisetsu. Keep studying smart, and we'll see you in the next explainer.